Hi, I'm Steve Adubato, and I want to get right to this. We are honored to be joined by the Honorable Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman, who represents the 12th Congressional District and is a real leader in the United States House of Representatives. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Steve. It's good to see you.
You know, this is part of a whole series of programs we're doing on several subjects that you can touch on. One is confronting racism in all of its forms. The other one is democracy at a crossroads. So let's start with the latter. January 6th, the insurrection. I've heard you talk about on a whole range of national broadcasts. Your experience that day, A, and B, the long-term implications you believe for our democracy. Please, Congresswoman.
My experience that day was sort of in the dark a lot. Went to the, started out really early in the morning having to leave my apartment because there were bombs behind it, because I lived next to I'm in Washington, to the RNC. Went to my office building to go to my brand new office in the Cannon building. Step in there, they told me, you got to get out of here, it's too close. So I went down into the tunnel, encountered a whole bunch of people. My husband was with me as well as a staff person because we were evacuated from our apartment. And so I said, well, let's go to the Capitol because we'll be safe there and there are fewer people there. Famous last words. Went there, was going down the hallway. I was going to go down to the attending physician's office, encountered a police officer. He said, I don't think you want to go down there any further. They're coming in. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Because I knew that there was demonstration outside. I did not know that it was pressing inside. So I said, well, I just need to go down that hall and to the left. And he kind of shrugged his shoulders and walked away from me. So I figured this can't be too serious if that's, if he's going in the opposite direction. So I continued down and encountered another police officer. He said, ma'am, you can't go down there. I looked up and I could see the police officers struggling with people in really bright reds and things of that nature. So I went to my left and went down the hallway and doors opened up and they said, come and shelter in here, which is what I did. And I stayed in there for a couple of hours in a small setting with my husband, my staffer, and a nurse from the attending physician's office. We only saw what was happening on the outside because we had a little television, but not what was happening on the inside. Ultimately, they came and got us. We went to another holding room. Went into that room. There were a lot of members and staff, some without masks.
They did not, Congresswoman? Some did not?
Masks. Some without masks.
How close were they?
Well, I had one young lady that was sort of almost standing over me, having a conversation with someone behind me, and I had to tell her to put her mask on twice. And then some other members, they were farther away, but they were in the same room, and they refused the mask that one of my colleagues was offering them in a very nice way. So we stayed there until things kind of cleared out, made our way to another room in the Capitol, and ultimately upstairs on the second level, I was in the whip's office, waiting for a chance to vote, waiting for things to completely calm down. And that's kind of like it in a nutshell.
But other than the fact that you're compromised, your health, and you want to make sure that you were healthy, and you contracted COVID after that, you asked, some colleagues and staff refused, speaks for itself. The bigger picture, longer term implications of that insurrection from your view, Congresswoman, are?
Democracy is fragile. We can't take it for granted. It was definitely threatened over the last 4 years, and it culminated in what I consider to be an insurrection. That is scary. We live in very scary times right now, where there's a lot of anger and hatred that I think has been sort of fermented by the former president, and that we have to be very careful, that we have to be in both a stage of diligence, watchfulness, at the same time, we got to be in a state of healing. Democracy is a messy form of government. You know it. Everyone has a right to express their individual concerns. Everyone has a right to demonstrate, et cetera. But it raised its ugly head. The threat to democracy raised its ugly head as well as the threat of racism in our country. In the long term, we have a long way to go, but we better actively work in both policy, conversation, and legislation to make sure that we are fortified in so many ways.
So along those lines, it's the transition to our Confronting Racism series. Part of that series is we are profiling African-American leaders who, frankly, have made a huge difference, not just in the African-American community, but beyond, in New Jersey and in the nation. A couple things about Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman. Not only are you the first black woman to represent New Jersey in the United States Congress, can I also say that your dad, the great John Watson, you learned from him, but so did I as a very young member of the legislature. He was a mentor of mine, as you well know. You were the first black woman to serve as majority leader in the state assembly, and first African-American woman to be the chair of the Democratic Party in the state. Many firsts. However, beyond your accomplishments, confronting racism means what to you, Congresswoman?
For me, it was an everyday experience. I mean, as I worked in the executive branch of government for 28 years, I experienced it even when I worked for the Division on Civil Rights. And I filed a complaint against the Attorney General.
I remember. I remember that.
Oh, okay. So, I encountered that being a first in several offices and in several departments at certain levels, being alone. Being kind of, people weren't too sure about me, why I was there, whether or not I deserved to be there. So being questioned as to whether or not I was prepared to be in spaces from executive office spaces to even legislative spaces is something that I experienced personally. When I decided I was going to run for my dad's seat, I wasn't encouraged by someone who I thought should have been very encouraging to me because he both knew me and knew my dad very well. And so should have had high expectations, but I had to go about and prove myself. So for me, being Black and being female Steve Meets, I always had to prove myself in every endeavor that I undertook.
When it comes, Congresswoman, to race relations and all the tension and all the polarization and all the whatever, how hopeful are you that we can make meaningful progress in being able to talk back and forth and learn more about each other, the things we don't understand, particularly about each other's respective experiences, disproportionately those in the African-American community who have suffered for so long?
I think it's good that we're talking about it more. I think that it is good that we're entertaining legislative initiatives and we're entertaining reparations legislation and resolutions and things of that nature. But you and I both know that talk is cheap. And so I'm glad to see this administration, this brand new administration in Washington, as well as the administration here in New Jersey, being diverse and recognizing that out of the diversity of this country and out of the diversity in their administrations, there will come greatness. It is a very dangerous time. We see a lot at firsthand that we never saw before because people are filming everything. I think that has really struck people in a very personal way when they saw George Floyd, in particular, Ahmaud Arbery's situation, as well as others, Tamir Rice, many others.
The list is way too long.
The list is way too long. But what I think it has stunned the sensibilities of people who thought they were our allies, but maybe hadn't spoken up or stood in our space with us enough.
United States Congresswoman Bonnie Watson Coleman from the 12th Congressional District. Many firsts, but even more importantly, continuing to make a huge difference. Congresswoman, thank you so much. You honor us by your presence.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. I'm Steve Adubato. We'll be right back.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation. Funding has been provided by PSE&G, New Jersey Sharing Network, NJM Insurance Group, Delta Dental of New Jersey, Operating Engineers, Local 825, Fedway Associates, Inc., IBEW Local 102, Eastern Atlantic States Regional Council of Carpenters, St. Joseph's Health, and by these public-spirited organizations, individuals, and associations committed to informing New Jersey citizens about the important issues facing the Garden State, and by Employers Association of New Jersey. Promotional support provided by Insider NJ, and by ROI-NJ.
Being a kid is all about playing, laughing, and having fun. Doing what they do best, from rolling in leaves to building a snowman. But when illness or injury slows your little one down, you want the best pediatric care possible. Turn to the experts at the St. Joseph's Children's Hospital to get your superhero feeling super again. St. Joseph's Health, helping kids be kids.